Welcome to the Reboot Chronicles, connecting you to the world's top leaders and CEOs rebooting their organizations and themselves with revealing stories to help you prosper in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, and as a serial CEO who's led dozens of companies that created thousands of jobs and billions in revenue, my passion is uncovering powerful lessons that can inspire you to reboot your organization, your career, and your life. Listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts or at rebootchronicles.com. I'd like to welcome Adam Johnson to the Reboot Chronicles. Adam runs American Ingenuity Portfolio at Bullseye Investment Group, which has outperformed the S&P Index 500 since inception. Adam is also the founder and author of Bullseye Brief, a weekly publication focused on growth opportunities for thoughtful long-term investors. He has anchored several programs at Bloomberg Television and appears, I think, almost daily now on Fox Business as a regular panelist and top portfolio manager. Adam, good to see you.
Oh, Dean, thanks for having me. It's really great to be able to have a long-form conversation and not worry about commercial breaks every 7 minutes.
Yeah, or people cutting you off, and I'll try not to do that. But yeah, I saw you on Mornings with Maria this morning as usual, and you guys were talking about, the second half of this decade and what consumers, investors should expect. And in a more long-form version of that, what should retail investors, do? What should they be looking for and doing in these opportunities ahead?
Well, the short answer, and the one I think we can all understand, is if you have any cash, it should be invested in the market right now. And I tell you why. There is a lot more to like than to fear. The world is never perfect, and there are always reasons to hold cash or to step aside or not invest. But no, I'm telling you right now, there's a lot to like. From the macro to what's happening in Washington. And let me just drill down a little bit for the benefit of our viewers. We already have an economy that's growing 3%. That's pretty good. We already have employment right now that is so strong, we have the highest amount of gross adjusted income ever being made by a very able workforce, and they're spending it. And as people spend record amounts of money, they are generating significant earnings growth for companies in the S&P 500. Remember, 2/3 of the U.S. economy is consumption-based. So again, if people are employed and they're spending money, that's good for all those S&P 500 companies. And that's why we're going to see double-digit earnings growth as the reporting season begins here in the middle of the first quarter. That's very exciting. So we've got a strong economy, we've got strong employment, we've got strong earnings. We already had all of that. And now we're actually getting an administration in Washington that is business friendly. And by that, I mean they're trying to lower taxes. They want to cut regulations. They want to free up drilling. They want to unleash the creativity that defines this wonderful country of ours, and why I created the American Ingenuity Fund in the first place, to try to leverage that. It's very exciting. And then bringing efficiency to government is so important, Dean, because we spend too much money. That's why we've got a deficit. We need to get that down. So I think this is a very exciting time to put money to work. I have been buying very consistently over the past several weeks. We had a 7% correction for the NASDAQ from the December highs to the middle of January. And I think given that we had 4 similar corrections last year, and they all proved to be good buying opportunities, the same is true this go around. We'll have other 7% corrections over the course of 2025. But the point is, those are healthy pullbacks, and you want to put your money to work.
Yeah, and for people that aren't day traders, different audience, maybe more thoughtful or more cautious, your kind of crowd. Some of them say, hey, it's like I should have got into these, Magnificent Seven stocks. Let's go with that for now.
Yep.
I should have got into those for the last 2 years, and now here we are in 25, 26. It's like, have I missed the boat? And
No.
that comes up all the time.
Yeah, no, you haven't missed the boat, nor have they, nor have any of us. And I'll tell you why. So I think you have to think about investing and deploying capital as a continuum. As an example, I have a number of investors who've been with me for a number of years. And in the past several weeks, as always happens, it's a new year and people allocate capital. They get bonuses. All of a sudden, you've got some money in the bank. What do I do with it? And they come to me and they say, is it too late to buy? I say, no. Well, but yeah, we're up 80% on this name and 40% on that. Okay, we're down a little bit on those, but should we only buy the down ones? And I say no, because we are invested because we think that over the next several months, several quarters, or even several years, all these stocks are going higher. So it doesn't matter if you're buying today or if you bought yesterday or if you're going to buy 3 weeks from now. In fact, I would say to people who know that they've got incremental money coming in, say every month or every quarter, we'll just allocate a little more and whatever that is. So, maybe you say, well, I can afford to put another $10,000 into the portfolio per quarter, or maybe it's 25,000. Fine. Every quarter, we'll just add another 25,000. It's 100 over the course of the year. We don't have to worry about buying bottoms or picking bottoms. I always tell people, think about time in the market, not timing the market. So,
I like that.
forget about what happened 6 months ago or 2 years ago. Gosh, I wish I'd bought stocks, when I was in high school.
Or land. Yeah.
Yeah, but just look forward. That's what we're focused on.
Is this, by the way, those of you listening, and you can add a zero or subtract a zero to what he just said quarterly. So whatever, it's all
Yeah.
scalable. But is this why you guys, specifically you, keep outperforming the S&P index?
Well, okay.
Or
Now,
so?
that's a hard question because the short answer is, well, it's because I'm a good stock picker, Dean. I don't get them all right, but I do get more right than I get wrong. And I also think I'm pretty disciplined, and I like the way I manage the portfolio. And by the way, that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and making mistakes along the way. But when I say
Sure.
run the portfolio, what I do is I have about 40 names in the American Ingenuity portfolio. They're all weighted at anywhere from 2 to 4% of capital at cost. So a Facebook, a Microsoft, an Nvidia, 4%. Some of the riskier, smaller ones, SoFi, the first ever from the ground up internet bank, or Joby Aviation, which I think will be the Uber of the skies. Those are 2% positions, right? A, that's how you manage exposure, and then B, the other thing I do is before I buy a position,
Yep.
I do all the research. I write it up. I actually write a 3-page document for myself, and I identify, in a perfect world where I'd buy it, I put an alert on the downside so that if I'm wrong, we're down 30, 35%, you start to say, yeah, this isn't working. And you reevaluate. And then I also, and this is very important, I set a target. What's my expectation? And for me, that's typically a double or a triple in the stock price, right? I'm
Right.
a growth guy. And as I learned from my boss and mentor many years ago, you're only rational once, and it's before you buy the stock. So, right? Because we fall in love. We buy the
It's
stock.
all over them. Oh
We
gosh.
make excuses. Oh, well, that quarter didn't go according to plan, but it's okay. Well, maybe it's not okay. So set the target in advance because
Right.
you will fall in love. And when it gets to that target, automatically sell a third. And what you do is you honor your process. You force yourself to re examine the stock and say, can I move my target higher for the other amount that I'm holding? Or you'll sell the whole amount. And what you can really, and this is key, Dean, that money that you just sold, where you book your profit, you can now deploy that into another stock. And just as a pond gets stagnant because there's no water flowing in and out, a portfolio gets stagnant if there are no positions moving in and out. You want a river, you want a flow. Fish live in rivers because there's always stuff coming down that they can eat. And so there's always stuff out there that we can buy. And the only way to be able to do that is if we free up capital.
I love the analogies. What you just also described, that process or thought decision tree, it's almost like a product roadmap. Many of the CEOs I've had on big public companies to the SoFis of the world,
Yeah.
that's kind of the way they think too. It's a process of what does success look like and they never ask themselves, what does failure look like and when should we change and adapt and
Right.
shift? And there's some good analogies in there. I wanted to shift to tech and competitiveness of our country, America, that is. And I just published another article in Forbes that it was basically about AI and the endless demand for data centers and power and energy, which we don't have
Oh,
enough
yeah.
of. And our countries need to be better at infrastructure. So curious on your thoughts on that and then kind of get into the AI and the Mag 7 discussion.
Yeah, there are a lot of places we could take this. The first thing that came to my
Let's
mind,
start with
I'm
infrastructure if you have an opinion, because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a
Well,
hot
I'll,
one.
I'll give you two stock picks. By the time this conversation's over, we'll probably run through all 40 of them. So I hope people have their pencils. But
Nice. I do.
yeah, okay, good. The two names that come to mind are Marvell and Dycom. Marvell is a semiconductor company focused on making semiconductors and power regulation systems so that when you combine all those NVIDIA chips into one rack or unit, they
Right.
don't overheat and explode one another. So Marvell, MRVL is the ticker, is one very specific way to address power and the incredible power that is needed to enable AI. DICOM, ticker DY, is another, but very different. If Marvell is managing power within the rack of servers and chips,
Right.
DICOM is effectively doing that out on the streets and the poles and in the cables underground. It's real simple. It's not a particularly sexy company, and yet I realized when I bought this, about a year and a half ago, oh, actually, these are the guys that enable all the telecom providers, service providers, to actually get power, electricity where it needs to be. It's
Okay.
infrastructure. It's just basic infrastructure. And, maybe 20 years ago, that would have been telephone poles. And then 10 years ago, it became fiber optic cables. And now it's all the very complex wiring that we need to enable AI within data centers, et cetera. So there are two names right there. And, I think about needs and power needs and how could we do that more efficiently. And there are the two things that come to mind. And I don't necessarily have an actionable stock pick, but as I'm talking myself through this, I'm thinking I need to flesh that out and find one. One is natural gas powered turbines.
Right.
So throughout the South, there's so much natural gas, and you have a lot of factories that are actually powered by natural gas that they bring to the surface right there under the factory, and they use that natural gas that they own. They don't have to go out and buy it, and they use that to power turbines that create electricity. And that's how they power their factories. It's incredibly efficient. We need more of that. And we need a government, and we're finally getting one, that's more willing to use the natural resources that we have under our feet, as opposed to not allowing drilling and restricting drilling because we're worried about economic impact. We want to be responsible, but we need to get away from the green obsession that has absolutely crushed Germany. That's a real warning to us. Germany's economy has contracted not 2 quarters in a row, 2 years in a row. That's 8 quarters. What a disaster, because they prioritized a green agenda. So we've got all this energy under our feet. We can unleash it. So natural gas powered turbines, I want to figure out how to actually get that theme into the portfolio. And something
I've got a couple names for you, but they're still
oh,
private. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yeah,
your
yeah,
wheelhouse.
they're still private. Yeah, I just do public.
I
That's
know.
what's tricky. Um, well, not tricky. That's just what I do. I'm very specific about what I do. I don't buy value stocks. I don't buy private companies. I don't buy anything outside the U.S. I buy U.S. publicly listed companies that are growing, that are doing something different. That's why it's called the American Ingenuity Platform.
Oh, I didn't know you skipped
Yeah,
the yeah. I mean, yeah.
it's
In American Ingenuity portfolios, you've got everything in there. You've got the
mhm.
Mag 7. You've got a lot of categories.
Yeah. Well, it's the people, companies, and technologies driving the world forward. And that captures a lot. So, yes, I've got the Mag 7 because that's core ingenuity. I've got a number of semiconductors because that speaks to computing power, which is just another way of saying artificial intelligence. I've got a theme that I like to call Better Mousetrap, where it's companies that are doing something different,
I like that.
maybe reinventing.
Yep.
Um, but that's exciting. I have a lot of fun with that, and I have some normalization picks. Companies that are still being penalized by not really fears of recession so much anymore as just interest rates that are still trying to find their home, and I think they're going down from here, which will be positive. So yeah, they're I like to as another mentor said to me. He used to, when he was interviewing people, he would ask a question. And the question was, how do you make the most amount of money on Wall Street? And the answer that got you the job and got me the job was find a theme and leverage it. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every day. Artificial intelligence, energy needs, uh, build a better mousetrap, computing power. right? These are very simple themes that we can all understand, and then we can go find the companies that leverage those themes most effectively, and we can put them in the portfolio in reasonable percentages, and then we can just let these companies do what they do. And if we get it right, what we find is that these companies grow over time. And sometimes, you got to live through some pain. I mean, SoFi, ugh, I owned that stock at $5 for 18 months, and people kept saying, Adam, this is really dead money. I said, well, just hang in there. And,
There was a
now
lot of pain. Yeah.
it's in the teens. That's a triple. And so you have to be there. I mean, it tripled in, 9 months. And I don't know if it'll triple from here, but I think it'll certainly double from here. So you just have to be there and you have to be patient. But it's about identifying high quality companies that are doing something different, and there's a pathway to cash flow growth.
And the timing's important too. So, the second half of this decade, at least for the next years, is going to be an incredible time, a massive, just bridging off the infrastructure discussion. What do you think of the important things to not just, keep America in its leadership position? We've talked about tech, but there's other sectors, but really American competitiveness is not just, killing other countries and in the market. It's actually, cooperating with them in my capitalist view. Yeah, what do you think of the three things or so that should be done to really accelerate that in the next couple of years?
Well, we need to stop spending money we don't have, number one, because that makes us inefficient. We're not able to reinvest in ourselves as a country. I mean, think about it. The debt service right now, what is it, 1.4 trillion?
You know,
What
all
we
that
pay
could be going into
interest.
the next generation of whatever
Yeah,
we want to do. Yeah,
our interest expense is almost twice, not quite twice, 80% what we spend on defense, right? So the defense budget, what is that, 800 and 50 billion, and we're spending 1.4 trillion just on interest, on
yeah.
debt. I mean, that's unsustainable. Likewise, two-thirds, as I'm sure you and our viewers know, two-thirds of the government's budget every year goes towards entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That's not sustainable. We know it. I'm a stock analyst. I run cash flow. So we can all do the same, and we can just run the cash flow on those programs, and it runs out. So we need to get the spending under control. I'm hopeful the Doge team will start to address these issues. And by lowering our debt expense, we can start to be more strategic in how we invest in the country, because the government needs to invest in the country just as companies invest in their own infrastructure and people and technology and products and research and development. So that's something we absolutely need to do, is get spending under control. And one of the things that I'm not comfortable with that appears to be starting to take shape is tariffs. And I'll tell you why. I'm someone
Mhm.
who believes that smaller government is better government. In the same way, I don't want my government telling me what kind of stove or water heater that I can have. I don't want the government uh, telling other governments or other companies that they're going to have to start paying tariffs simply because they don't produce here. I mean, to me, that just it creates an inefficiency. It distorts markets. It allows U.S. companies to be inefficient because we're effectively subsidizing them,
Well,
and
right.
it may, may ultimately prove inflationary. It may. We don't know.
Yeah,
Lots
not
of
only
the
that, I mean, many of the CEOs we've had on, they're running multinational corporations. They can't just bring it all here. Some of it was never here.
Yeah, that's right. And think about car companies that realized labor was cheaper in the U.S. and in some cases Canada, and so a
Started
lot of
with
the auto
NAFTA. Sure.
suppliers located factories to Canada and Mexico. Those are long-term capital allocation decisions, and now all of a sudden, out of the blue, they're going to be penalized for having done that. So I'm not thrilled with that particular situation. It's a
Yeah,
work in
so
progress, but efficiency is important to me.
no, I'm glad you brought it up because it's the intersection of business and policy is becoming so important. But you
Yep.
also brought up, hey, we need to have jobs because of the consumer spend or they invest with you. And if jobs are going, down and to the right versus up and to the left, kind of a thing, whatever, depends which way your camera is pointing. It's how does that play into it? I feel like, back in the Reagan era, it was all about growth and jobs and supply side versus cut, 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 cut. And
Correct.
personally, I think it's got to be a combination of the two. But there used to be a lot of I think there was a book written on it called "Bullshit Jobs." There was a lot of company and government. There was employment from a lot of these big companies, and it seems like next few years there's going to be some shrinking going on. So, yeah, what's your view on we need to create the next generation of companies that'll create the jobs? Is my kind of platform. But what say you?
Well, those are the kinds of companies that I'm investing in. I don't have children. If I did, and especially if I had kids who were high schoolers, I would say let's think about what you're good at,
Yep,
and let's also think about how you can get paid and where you can make some money. And because those conversations need to start happening in high school, because that sets you up for your choices in college, which set you up for your choices in life. It's not about getting into an Ivy League school, and that may or may not be the best thing to do anyway.
good advice.
But, what are you good at? Um, where's your talent? Are you an analytical person? Are you someone who's very good with numbers? And what I'm getting at is it might be that there are a whole slew of new jobs. And it's not just computer programming, it's electrical engineering. It's being the sort of person who actually has an analytical mind that can understand the myriad of if then statements that ultimately start to get towards machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's incredible, Dean. There are kids, 24, 25 years old, who
Hmm.
have electrical engineering degrees making $400,000 a year as a base, and then they get a multiple of that in stock going to companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, etc. These kids are incredibly smart. They're very good at it, and they can get paid for that expertise. So it might be tempting to say, yeah, I want to go to Wall Street and I want to buy and sell, or gosh, I love fashion. I had this conversation with my niece. She says, I really love fashion and I want to be a video blogger. I said, oh, how are you going to get paid for that? And do we really need another one?
You didn't
I
roll
said,
your eyeballs at her, did you?
I did. I did. I rolled my eyeballs at her. I said, "You are a star athlete. What can you do with that?" I mean,
Okay.
I will. I won't brag about what a star athlete was. She was in high school and college, but play to your strengths. So I went to Princeton and I was a pre med. Only problem is my first semester, I got an A, a B, a C, and a D. And the D was in embryology and genetics. And I
Oh,
pretty
that's not
soon
good.
learned that, maybe I was better at economics. And so, you have to be honest with yourself and where you're talented. And this is sort of a long-winded way to coming back to sort of what you were saying is I think there are going to be a lot of jobs that require technical expertise. And the traditional humanities approach to education may not be the most efficient way to get there. If you're good with computers, if you like gaming, if you have a logical mind, if you're inclined mathematically, maybe you specialize early and go into these electrical engineering programs that ultimately will help you to leverage what you're good at, enable you to have fun doing it, and you'll make a ton of money.
Yeah, exactly. And what about the dirty job sector? Is Mike,
Yeah.
you know, the old show some of you might
Yeah,
remember. It's like
I grow.
that category is booming.
You better believe it
Speaking of
because,
building data centers and
yeah,
and things.
yeah, we think that we all have to go to college and get
Yeah, I
these
love that you
degrees.
said you don't, because some people still aren't on that bandwagon. It's true.
Well, go learn a trade or a skill, and all of a sudden you're self-employed, and that's incredibly empowering. I'm my own boss, and it's very empowering. It's been hard, and I had to draw down savings for a few years to
Yep.
fund myself before I really had cash flow and customers. But now that I'm up and running and my own boss, it's so empowering, and I love getting up in the morning and doing what I do, and running my own life. And you you go learn a trade, uh, electricity, plumbing, HVAC, and you intern for a few years, and all of a sudden now you hang your own shingle. You're running a business, and guess what? You can start hiring, and now you're the boss. And I mean that's incredibly empowering. I was down in Alabama last weekend shooting with a bunch of buddies of mine. We were shooting quail and had a ton of fun, and met a couple of the local guys down there. And this one guy is just awesome, who runs the largest infrastructure consulting company in Alabama. He started it because he was an engineer and got some sort of crazy project to consult on a bridge and realized, oh, there's actually business here, and there are a lot of bridges, and he now employs hundreds and hundreds of people. So,
Wow.
and by the way, he's the guy who's got the private jet that gets him down to his private yacht in the Caribbean. It's not the Wall Street investment banker. It's the guy in rural Alabama consulting on bridge construction. So I think, we all need to think outside the box. What are we good at? What will we have fun doing? And where can we get paid?
Yeah, and I recall another Reagan line. Sorry for memory lane here, but rugged individualism is what I would call your buddy.
Yeah.
I still can't get over you went to med school. I mean, those of you that aren't on the video feed, Adam, you do look like a doctor. I would take advice from you if you're if you're bedside. You got the coat and tie look too, which is good.
Well, I'm only wearing a coat and tie because it's so cold in New York. I actually need the layers, and I've got the heat on. That's what's so crazy. I'm wearing a heavy suit.
The when how do you manage risk, or how do you advise your clients to manage risk? Because some of them are, they're out trading on their own stuff too for fun, maybe, or whatever. But yeah, all the talk is always like, hey, everything's up and to the right until it's not. And yeah,
Yeah. So people will look at my fund and they'll look at my returns, or they'll look at what the Nasdaq's doing and say, "Oh my gosh, I want to put my money into your growth fund." And I
yeah.
always say, I do not want all of your money. I want
Ah,
all of the money you're willing to allocate to a growth strategy, because you have to be balanced. So I'm very volatile, and so I've had some spectacular years and I've had some unspectacular years. Over time, I have beaten the indices and I've done very well for people, and I'm very proud of that. But I am volatile. And when markets turn down, as they all, do inevitably. I mean, Nvidia had 3 pullbacks of 20 to 30% last year, right? And each time people said, "Oh my gosh, is it over?" And I said, "No, it's not over." But right, I mean, markets are volatile, and the
right.
types of companies I buy, like Nvidia, are volatile. So I want a that portion of people's money they want to allocate to a growth strategy. And just to make the math easy, because sometimes we need to, make it easy on ourselves, divide it into thirds. A third goes to growth. A third goes to dividend income with some bonds in there, and then maybe a third goes to good old government bonds. I mean, there's nothing wrong with earning 5.25% on government bonds. You have liquidity. You have effectively no risk. I mean, yes, you have risk because it's an instrument, but it's the U.S. government. They've never defaulted. I'm pretty sure they never will. Right. So a third, a third, a third. Growth, income, government bonds. Now, it might be that for some younger folks, we can say, well, okay, we'll go 50% growth, and
Yep.
and then we'll go 50% dividend income. We don't need, for someone who's 28, 29, 30, and putting, a certain amount of money aside every month, fine. Let's build it, let's grow it. This is money that we're not going to use for probably 10 years, maybe 20, 30, 40. But as you get older, you need to think about money that you'll need in retirement. So especially for folks who are in their 70s, I
Yeah,
always tell
there's a
them,
bunch of boomers listening in. Yeah, what are you telling
yeah,
them today?
yeah. Well, for folks in their 70s, I'll say, well, 20, 25% is probably about as much as you should have allocated. Maybe 30, maybe, but, probably 20, 25% to a high growth strategy like mine. And because, you're not working anymore, and what are your other sources of income? I'm not a wealth advisor. I'm not even a wealth manager. I am a stock picker, and I am a growth portfolio manager, right? I know what I do. I stay in my lane. I'm good at it, and I'm an offensive weapon for people who want to invest in that particular style.
Yeah, you've got a lot of muscle memory and seeing around corners, and I see some arrows in your back. What's been the biggest challenge you overcame it? I know you had to tip into your personal stuff way back in the old days, and probably had some scorched earth moments.
Oh, sure. Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, 2008, I had just built a monster house because I'd had 3 great years in a row, and I
Yeah,
thought, well, I'm going to have a fourth and a fifth and a sixth, and it didn't work out that way. And I had to sell my house at a big loss, and it was just awful.
yeah,
But I did, and I got the money out, and that enabled me to redeploy capital and put it back to work. And the worst thing you can do is anchor yourself to a bad mistake. Oh my gosh, I built this house, and then I lost the money, and it's just so horrible. Yeah, it was. You also learned a valuable lesson. Don't get carried away. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Don't assume next year is going to be better than this year. I mean, on and on, right? And you just have to get over it. That money is gone. So now we got to go create some new money, and we're going to do that by hard work and and creativity and resilience and you have to look forward.
Yeah.
Nothing. Life is not a straight line.
I love that, Adam. And that's what Reboot is all about. I mean, but don't anchor yourself to a bad mistake. I like that. Might steal that for an episode title, probably yours. And how do you like being on TV? Your reason we like you is because you're very relatable and you give smart advice and in a non-retail-y way.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
pretty good. But yeah,
Oh,
what do you hate about being on TV? What do you like about it?
I don't hate anything about it. I actually really enjoy
The
it.
4 a.m. calls that you have to get to the studio? No?
I'm so accustomed to getting up early now. And by the way, it's not 4, it's 4:30. Those 30 minutes make a
Oh,
big
30
difference.
minutes count. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, it's actually 4:50, and then the car comes at 5:20, and we're in front of a camera at 6.
Nice.
And yeah, and so
I need more coffee than you, though, it sounds like.
yeah, yeah. No, what I really enjoy about being on television is the prep that I have to do to go on television.
Ah,
And by that, I mean the day before I go on a program, and as you know, I go on a few days a week. I actually sit down and I put together sort of one page, and then I theme it out: stocks, bonds, the economy, politics, and then etc. Right. So those are my basic categories, and then I put 3 or 4 bullet points under each. And each bullet point is a self-contained concept unto itself that could probably expand into a 3 to 4 minute conversation. So basically, I've diagrammed what could be 90 minutes worth of conversation, and I've put it all on one page. And the process, and that doesn't change necessarily day to day. I might tweak things. It'll change week to week, or certainly over a 2 or 3 week period. There's an arc to those bullet points and the themes,
right.
but I don't have to reinvent the wheel every day, number one. And number two, because I have crystallized all of those sort of big concepts and put some specific data and ideas behind it, I know exactly where I want to go. And it just makes me able to speak succinctly. And I think part of going on TV, part of the mission of going on TV, because it's a limited time, is you have to take complex issues and make them understandable and relatable for people, who may only have 3, 4, 5 minutes to listen.
Right. Good advice. Well said. We need more of that, not just on TV, but in the boardrooms as well. Adam, I want to thank you for joining us today. It was a great discussion.
Thank you, Dean. I've really enjoyed this, and thanks
You got it.
for letting me speak.
Yeah, thanks. You listen to Adam Johnson. This is Dean DeBias with the Reboot Chronicles. Check us out at therebootchronicles.com, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you soon.